In this video, I want to talk about a few different ways of iterating or looping over an array and running some code for every item in that array. This is a small program written in JavaScript and the P5.js library that draws some bouncing balls on the canvas. The balls are represented with a class called ball that has a few properties: the X and Y position where the ball is on the screen, a dx and dy to control how fast the ball is moving on the X and Y axis, and a radius for how large the ball is. The step function moves the ball. It takes the current X position and increments it by its speed, and the current Y position and increments it by its Y speed. It also has some basic collision detection and collision response so that the balls bounce when they hit the edge of the canvas. The draw method draws an ellipse at the location of the ball. In the setup function, we push 10 new randomly positioned balls onto the balls array. And I'm just drawing the first 5 of them here in the draw function. Every ball needs to have step called to move it and draw called to draw it. We could do this and have a single statement to step and draw each ball. That's a lot of repetition though, and it's not very flexible. To draw all 10 balls, I would need to have 10 more lines of code here. If I had 100 balls, there would be a whole lot of code here. And if the number of balls in the array were to change, this sort of approach wouldn't work at all. It makes a lot more sense to use a loop to iterate over the array and call step and draw on each item. This code uses a loop to iterate through all of the balls in the array and call step on them, and then a second loop that iterates through all the balls in the array and calls draw on them. I like to separate out and have all of my step code run before I do any of my drawing. The style for looping here is a for loop. This is the most common loop in JavaScript. It's the type of loop that you probably learned first. To make this kind of a loop work, we have to do a few things. We have to initialize a variable to our starting number, provide a condition that says when the loop should stop running, and then provide an expression to increment my variable to keep track of where we are in the loop. So I will start out as 0. We'll check to see if the value of I is less than the length of the array. If it is, we'll run the code, and then we'll increment the value of I. We'll check again, run the code, increment, check again, run the code, increment. And when the value of I gets to be no longer less than balls.length, we'll stop this loop and go on to the next part of the code. This is a very flexible way to write a loop. We can start with whatever value we want. We can use whatever kind of test we need to figure out when to stop looping, and we can write any expression that we want to increment the loop. This flexibility is also the problem with this kind of loop. If you don't need the flexibility, this is a lot of work to do a simple thing. Let's contrast this for loop with a for of loop. This is the for of loop. You can see right away that it's a lot shorter. For const b of balls, b.step. For const b of balls, b.draw. This loop takes an array and pulls each item in the array one by one and assigns it to the value b. And then we can call b.step. This is a lot less flexible. We can't choose where in the array to start, and we can't choose where in the array to end. We always start at the beginning, end at the end, and visit every single item in the array. That's a common thing to want to do, and if that's what you want to do, this construct removes a lot of noise. We don't have to even create a variable called I at all. We don't have to worry about its initial value. We don't have to worry about a condition to check or how to increment it. A third option for doing this is to use the array forEach method. Here's the array I want to iterate. I call the forEach method on that array, and then I pass a function that I want to be run once for every item in the array. This function will receive the item in the array as an argument, and then do whatever I want it to do. The array for each method is a higher order function. It's a function that takes a function as an argument. While this is the most compact, I think it can be a little harder to read if you're not familiar with passing functions as data, or if you're not familiar with the arrow function syntax. I've uncommented these all out so we can look at them side by side. Now they're all running, so the balls are moving at triple speed. But let's just take a look at these. They're all doing exactly the same thing. They all call step on all of the balls and then draw on all of the balls. Step and draw, step and draw. I would probably choose this for of loop most of the time. I think it strikes a good balance of being compact and concise, but being clear and easy to read. In fact, even if you've never seen a for of loop before, I think it's pretty easy to read this and understand what it does.